Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Draft Room. This is the NFL Draft Podcast of the Packernet Podcast Network. If you'd like to call in, send a mock, do whatever it is you want to do, questions, comments, concerns, the phone number here is 608-561-3243. We don't have any of those today, so we'll stick to the regular scheduled programming. As I said yesterday, I tried to kind of stay away from it so that I could still end up doing what we're going to do today. And that is, whereas yesterday we looked at guys that could really blow the doors off, today I want to look more at who does the combine matter for? Because some of these things are kind of a formality, right? Fernando Mendoza, he's not even going to throw at the combine. You know, even the interviews mean nothing because he has a lock spot. You know, I mean, you could say medicals, but I don't think there's any flags they're looking for. It's just if something were to come up. But it's a formality pretty much across the board. And that's true of several prospects. Not that we 100% know, but you can kind of look at some people and say, you know, we know what you are. Other people, there are questions, and they can really help or hurt their draft stock at the combine. So I want to try to identify a couple of those prospects, and I figure we'll do it in a position-by-position way because why not? So the first guy I want to highlight is Diego Pavia out of Vanderbilt. Now, obviously, it's not really a measurement issue because they know what his height is. He's 5'9" and 7/8 and 198 pounds. Like, he's a small dude. Everybody knows that. We know what his measurements are. The issue with Pavia is less about his height, which everybody knows is an issue. The question is all the other stuff. It's obviously a non-desirable quality to be a smaller quarterback, but some guys can overcome that if they check a couple extra boxes, at least insofar as we're willing to take a risk on them. We're willing to take a chance. And I believe the biggest one that people are going to be looking at for the undersized Pavia is going to be his arm strength. The strength and the velocity of the ball coming out of his hand. So the throwing drills for Pavia with everybody up close, you know, running these drills, the accuracy throwing into tight NFL windows. So it's not about his measurements. It's not about his rushing ability or his 40 time necessarily, because everybody understands those positives. But you have to be able to check do you have an NFL arm box in order for us to take a shot on a guy that's, you know, under 5'10" and under 200 pounds. After that, and I'll pair these guys together because it's kind of the same questions, but Joe Fagnano of UConn and Cole Payton of NDSU. The biggest concern with these guys is the competition level. They're very good up against the competition that they went up against, but we need to be able to see if you have that NFL caliber processor. We got to get you in the meeting rooms and get you up on the chalkboard. We got to do all these different things to make sure that when we put you against better competition, you know, some Power 5 defensive player type of people, that you can hang. Fagnano also, there's questions about the arm strength and athleticism, and so the throwing for him also is going to be kind of a big deal. And I think the only other thing with Cole Payton, and I don't know that this is a combine thing that you can necessarily look at, but we need to be able to see that you're not just a run-first quarterback. That is going to be one of the questions. And again, I don't know if we're going to run any drills to test that. Probably not. I don't think that's really a thing, but we need to see you stand in the pocket and deliver. And then I think one of the more intriguing guys, and we haven't talked about him yet, but I'm kind of intrigued in doing his draft profile here because he's 6'3", 225, and dominated at a high-level school. And that is Joey Aguilar. So first of all, and I swear this is the first time I've heard of this, and now this is 2 in this year, he's fighting for eligibility to go back to school, which is so weird because he's already old. I feel like he's ruining his NFL potential to make some money back in college or something. The whole thing is so stupid. But anywho, maybe I'm not understanding the full story with him. But But, I mean, if you just look at a snapshot here, Aguilar, 6'3", 225, 91 PFF grade, 91 passing grade in his 1 year at Tennessee. I mean, he was phenomenal. 3,571 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks, 4.8% big-time throw rate to 1.9% turnover-worthy play rate. That's solid. But he's had a very long and winding road to get to where he is. Had no offers out of his high school. 2019 to 2020, he went to City College of San Francisco, which is a JUCO school. Redshirted 2019. In 2020, was canceled by COVID. 2021 and 2022, he went to Diablo Valley College, which is another JUCO. 2023 and 2024, he went to App State, which is an FBS school, and he did well there. Set school records in 2023. 2024 was solid but less efficient. Even his PFF grades did. His stats and grades all went down in that second year. Then I guess he went to UCLA in the spring of 2025. And then from UCLA transferred to Tennessee. So he's all over the place. He won the job in camp for Tennessee and delivered a career year leading the SEC in passing yards. And now he is currently, like we saw already with the guy who won his lawsuit, is arguing that his COVID year, his redshirt year, all that stuff should not count against his 4 seasons. And if he wins, he could, and I would assume would, go back to Tennessee. Apparently, this is over a $2 million NIL deal. So, again, you're going to the combine, presumably, unless this court case wraps up and you win and you go back to school or whatever. But, you're going to have some uncomfortable conversations with guys that, first of all, they're going to want to see you on the whiteboard. They're going to want to make sure that you are, everything is legit, that, you only have the 1 year of SEC or FBS, college play. But, again, it's the meetings with this guy are going to be very interesting. There's also going to be some medical stuff with him. Apparently in 2025, he played with a benign tumor pressing on his right bicep, causing weakness and pain in his arm. That was removed in 2026, about, a month and a half ago, which also maybe kind of explains a couple of the issues he's had or whatever. But, this NIL thing is so weird. It's creating these weird situations where teams now have to go, do you even want to come here, or are you just playing for $2 million like that's all you really care about is making a couple million and then you're going to go be a plumber or something because you're already, 24, 25, and you're trying to go back to college? And then you're going to try to enter the NFL at 26, like the oldest player ever, which, by the way, as we already talked about yesterday, the worst position to draft old players is quarterback in terms of the correlation between when they enter the pros and the likelihood that they're going to be successful at any point in their career or over the next 5 years or whatever the statistic specifically was. Quarterback was the absolute worst. So, you got questions about the short-term thinking of it all. And, again, do you really even want this? Or are you going to try to collect your $2 million? And then, you could argue it's smart, depending on what you would get as a, 6th round pick or 7th round or UDF or whatever he's going to be. And then nothing happens. If you're smart about it, you probably end up in the NFL next year. So you take the $2 million, you invest the $2 million, you go work in the NFL making good money for the years that you can. You do the best that you can, but at the end of the day, that's $2 million I may never see again. But again, it's short-term thinking, but if you don't really believe or if you're worried that it's not going to work in the pros, fine. But again, those are the questions that you have to ask as an NFL team. Are you coming here to be great, or is this kind of like a probably not going to work, but whatever. We'll do it because they'll pay me. I'll be a backup as long as I can, and then I'll go live my life with a big old nest egg. Which, by the way, Elon now is telling people to not invest because you won't need that money in the future. Which I think is terrible to tell people, but it is exciting as far as if he could be right. A couple other guys. You've got Taylon Green, who's a really exciting prospect out of Arkansas, mostly because of his athleticism, though. I think the throwing is going to be the biggest thing. And I remember watching Taylon Green, and you watch him in a, over a 10 play span, pick his best 10 plays, and you see the athleticism and some beautiful throws. But the regularity with which you see what the heck was that type throws is concerning. And you look at guys, I'll pick on Caleb here, who have those issues, and you realize, man, if he doesn't clean that up, he's never going to be a very good quarterback. And that's Caleb, who is infinitely more talented than Talon Green. His good is way better than Talon Green's good. So, you know, the potential is there with his mobility. He's a big dude. He can do some cool stuff, but the throwing has to be there. Haynes King, another 25-year-old guy, which is going to be problematic. It's also a very run-heavy scheme at Georgia Tech, which can kind of cloud the passing evaluation. So his throwing is going to be on display. And then you got the big medical questions. And there's quite a few in the quarterback class. I mean, it's a high percentage of the total quarterbacks even going to the combine. But Drew Aller out of Penn State had a season-ending leg injury, broken ankle. Carson Beck tore his UCL in the 2024 SEC Championship game. Big question there is that it seemed as though a lot of his velocity went down after that surgery in 2024. So medicals, in addition to seeing him throw, are going to be important. Nussmeier had that weird nagging abdominal thing, forced him into a shared quarterback role, sloppy mechanics, poor production. And then probably the biggest one is Jalen Daniels. He's had some chronic back injuries. Been in college for 6 years, largely due to all the time missed with his back injuries and stuff. So, I mean, that's going to be absolutely massive for him. Looking at running backs, a couple guys to keep an eye on. Nicholas Singleton out of Penn State. He was considered a top 5 running back in the class, but then the 2025 season happened. It really did not go very well. Rushing efficiency went down, and even worse than that, he fractured his 5th metatarsal, a Jones fracture, in his right foot. That was during the Senior Bowl practice. So medicals are going to be big for him. The fact that he fractured his foot means he's not going to be able to run any of the drills, so he's not going to be able to help himself in that way. So medicals and interviews are going to be massive in convincing everybody that he's going to be okay and even, you know, worth taking a risk on. Desmond Reed is going to be a big one, and for him it's mostly going to be his weigh-in. And then in addition to that, once he weighs in, assuming everything is okay with his weight in particular, how does he perform at that weight? Because as electric as he is as a running back, he's listed at 5'7.5" and 175. Very, very small. He also had a bunch of injuries in 2025, which is not great when you're that size, because that's one of the biggest concerns anyways. So he's got to come in, you know, he's got to put on a little bit of weight. The medicals have to clear, and then he has to be able to move at that weight and show that he can still be that same type of player. Because if he's going to stay at 5'7", 175, some teams are just going to move him off their board. Le'Veon Moss is another big one, very popular guy, big explosive, powerful guy. But again, injuries completely derailed everything. So not only does he have to clear the medicals, but he has to show that he still has the explosiveness with the broad jump, the vertical jump, etc. He can, you know, pass his medicals, but if the explosiveness is struggling, that may be red flag territory for a lot of people. Adam Randall out of Clemson was primarily a wide receiver at Clemson before moving to running back. So there's going to be some kind of basic things, you know, positional drills type things that teams are going to want to see him at. But 6'2", 235, he's going to be an appealing prospect for a lot of teams. But again, he's got to show that he can be a running back. And then lastly, I'll mention Jonah Coleman, primarily because he's a big, strong running back, and I think he's kind of being pigeonholed as just a short yardage guy. And so, you know, 40-yard dash, 10-yard split, as well as any receiving ability that he can demonstrate is going to be important for Coleman to prove that he can be an every down back. Looking at wide receivers, one of the biggest is going to be Jordan Tyson. Tyson is right now considered a top 10 prospect, so it's a pretty big deal. Torn ACL, MCL, and PCL in 2022, broken collarbone in 2024, hamstring issues in 2025, missed over 40% of his college games. Multiple NFC scouts have told reporters they have huge concerns about spending a premium pick on him. So that's going to be very, very big. Brennan Thompson, talk all the time about 40-yard dash doesn't really matter, but for Thompson it kind of does. He's 5'7", 170, and he's an elite speed guy. If he doesn't demonstrate elite speed, the value isn't really there. So he's expected to blow people away and demonstrate that he's worth picking at 5'7", 170 because of his speed. So if he's, in the 4.2s, you're talking he could go as high as like round 3-ish, possibly round 2, but probably not. If he runs a 4.4, which he shouldn't, but if he does, I mean, depending on if teams believe that, they may believe that they're whatever, believe their film evaluation or whatever. But I mean that if they believe that, if he's 4.4 and that's what he actually is, I mean we're talking UDFA. Jalen Waltall plays at Incarnate Word, so getting the on-field drills and whatnot are going to be important considering there is zero Power 4 tape. Similar with Ted Hurst from Georgia State. Not only does he need to show the on-field stuff, but a good 40 could certainly help him out. And then Chris Brazzell is another one. He's at consensus 51. So again, another really early, a lot of these guys are relatively early picks. But the problem with Brazzell is that at Tennessee, it's kind of a, I don't know if gimmicky is the right word, but he doesn't exactly have a fully developed route tree. So a lot of guys are going to need to get their hands on him. Tell him to run certain routes, get to see what he looks like through the drills, and make their determinations from there. It's always tough. I mean, a lot of people can flop as a result of that, but also some guys get discredited, and it turns out that was completely unwarranted. You look at a guy like DK Metcalf, and it's like, well, he can't run a route tree. He's a big, tall guy that runs go routes. Well, that looks stupid. So, anyways, let's take a break. We'll come back and rip through some more prospects that are going to need the combine. All right, taking a look at the tight end group. Leading off is Jaron Kanak. He's consensus 412 right now, so it's he's on the outside looking in. It's definitely a make or break thing. He was a linebacker that converted to tight end in 2025. Very little offensive experience at the position, and so I mean it is a straight up audition. The good news is he was a high school receiver and has a track background. So he has the tools to really blow people away, but he's going to have to do that because, again, right now he's a UDFA. If he can impress, then he probably ends up getting drafted. He's out of Oklahoma, if I didn't say that. Michael Trigg is a big one. He's at consensus 91, so he's on the other side of things, but he's the exact opposite. I mean, he's shown he can be a very good tight end, but there are red flags galore. He's played for 3 different schools. Had a knee injury at USC, broken collarbone at Ole Miss, dismissed from Ole Miss, suspended multiple times at Baylor for disciplinary reasons, got into a heated altercation with Baylor's AD over dress code. So, I mean, this is a very serious red flag guy. And so the interviews, I think, and the medicals are going to be massive, much more so than anything on field, because I think the talent is by itself evident. Now, obviously, if he doesn't bring that, that's going to be a pretty serious problem because that's why you're getting drafted. So you kind of have to demonstrate, here's why you're drafting me athletically, and then you're going to have to really do some work in the interviews. And I know a lot of these guys, you would think, I mean, that's the main focus, and they're going to do really well when it comes to the interviews and all that. A lot of these guys with personality issues, they don't do well in the interviews. They don't care. They don't try. They don't put forth. They have that sort of mentality from day one, and they don't change. And so, he could end up being right now he's number 4 on the tight end list. He could end up being a comfortable day 2 pick, or he could end up being a late day 3 pick. Another guy that's got some questions to answer is John Michael Gillenborg at 181, tight end out of Wyoming. Again, it kind of swings pretty heavily depending on what happens. He hasn't played since mid-September of 2025, and when he did, his stats were kind of modest. And so, again, demonstrate that you are still that dude. But then on top of that, we got medicals to figure out. And if you can clear the medicals, then it's just a matter of, presumably having conversations in terms of what happened. But more than anything, I mean, speak with your actions through the drills and demonstrate to them why you are still that dude that's worth drafting. But another guy that, pending the medicals, pending the interviews, and pending the drills, could shoot up the boards, could shoot completely off the boards. Marlon Klein is much more straightforward. He's at consensus 215 right now, which is kind of surprising, all things considered, or considering what we're about to talk about. But it comes down to the agility drills. I mean, obviously everything matters, but apparently, according to the fact that he's on the Bruce Feldman freak list, his 3-cone drill is a 6.89. If he's able to hit that number or anything close to it, that is an elite number for a tight end. Now, I don't know how much teams are going to put in that number as opposed to his film evaluation and as well as all the other things that happen at the combine. But again, any time you can put yourself in the elite of the elite category in any category, that's going to help your draft stock drastically. Now, if he can't hit that number or come close to that number, then again, you're in a situation where the one thing that everybody's wanting to see from you, you let us all down. Now what am I left with? I mean, you played at Michigan, so that's good. Otherwise, but he has the potential to put himself in the day 2 conversation. Currently, again, 215, we're talking 7th-round pick. If you can put yourself in the 2nd, 3rd round conversation, doesn't mean it's going to happen. But if you can even put yourself in the conversation, think how much of a massive jump that is. And then another guy that is outside right now at 364, Khalil Dinkins, tight end out of Penn State. The biggest thing is that he's kind of seen as either a tweener or kind of like with the running backs being short area. He's kind of just like an H-back tight end tweener. He's a blocker, short area, flip it out to him in the flat, which, there was a time where that would mean something. But today, obviously, you need to be able to demonstrate that you can do more than that. And so he's going to have a lot of opportunities here, athletic drills as well as pass-catching drills, to demonstrate that, no, I'm not just some inline blocking or H-back kind of a guy. I'm a legit receiving threat as a tight end. It's a big climb. Again, he's currently consensus 364, but he can at least make himself draftable if he can demonstrate that. Looking at the offensive line, one of the big ones is going to be Caden Proctor, offensive tackle out of Alabama. He's at consensus 20. One of the things a lot of people are excited about, infatuated about, whatever, is that he's in the 360-pound range. And he's on Bruce Feldman's freak list at 360. He can do incredible things, unbelievably powerful. But I think a lot of people look at it and say that's entirely out of control and unnecessary. He needs to be a smaller guy. Almost basically nobody at that size is playing. Nobody at last year's combine checked in north of 342. Only one 335-plus pounder went in the first 2 rounds. There is some Mekhi Becton talk, but I think Mekhi's size is also part of the reason he's struggling with injuries and whatnot. So a lot of people would like to see him come in well under. If he comes in 335, 340 and can, obviously it's not going to hurt his agility at all, but I think he'd just look a lot better. He'd move a lot better, and I think teams would feel a lot more comfortable taking Caden Proctor. If he's, 365, there's going to be, he's still going to probably go in the first round, I would assume, but I think there's going to be a lot of questions and concern about that. Max Ahenachor, as we've talked about, kind of an interesting story. He's a Nigerian immigrant who didn't play football until 2021 at East LA College. He was a basketball and soccer player, so I don't know that there's massive questions, but I do think that a lot of teams would feel better about being able to see him perform at the combine. I think the volatility is there just because there are those questions, and if he leaves the combine really disappointing, I think it could really hurt him, as opposed to maybe some other people that don't have those questions. That said, those people that have whatever questions of can he actually play at an NFL level or whatever, if he can, considering he's such an absolute freak, he moves incredibly well for a guy his size, that could vault him potentially into the first round conversation. He's currently on the board at 40. Another early guy is Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Really, really remarkable rise that he's had. As early as January, he was being talked about as a potential fourth-round pick. And so this is going to be his opportunity to either confirm or deny that that movement is warranted. On the interior side, Billy Schrouth, interior guy to Notre Dame, the guard. Medicals are going to be a real big one for him. He's currently down at 131 on the consensus board. He declared for the draft as a junior after a midseason MCL sprain against USC that ended his season. So it's kind of a unique and interesting situation. A lot of guys, when they get hurt like that, they go back to school. He got hurt, went out the season, and said, yeah, I'll be going to the NFL now. Thank you very much. So the medicals are going to be massive, especially since, he's one of those guys that could be a very high value that you're getting at a discount. The discount being, limited information, injury issues, a lot of questions surrounding him that had he just played the season at a high level would not even be considered this low. And then Parker Brailsford is the other interior guy, kind of the opposite of his counterpart from Alabama. Brailsford is a little small, listed at 6'2", 290 pounds. I think teams are kind of hoping he can add another 10 to 15 pounds, and then on top of that, you're going to have to show up and prove that you're still the same guy. Fortunately for him, he does have a relatively elite athletic profile, so, it'll probably slow him down a touch, but not so much that it would seem like, no, he's going to have to cut down in order to be able to play. He should be able to play just fine with an extra 10 pounds on him. All right, let's take our final break, and then we'll just rip through the defensive prospects, and we'll go from there. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, start off with the defensive line here. Do it all as one big group. Romelo Height, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech, is a guy to keep an eye on. Had a phenomenal year. We've talked plenty about him. Played opposite David Bailey, the one of the premier pass rushers in this class. The biggest thing is the weigh-in already happened at the Senior Bowl, where he came in at a little under 6'1", I guess, in 234. So you've got a 25-year-old rookie who's got one real year of production, and when it was with a dominant defensive group, and he's one of the smallest pass rushers, probably would be the smallest pass rusher in football. I don't know of anybody that's 234. He would rank ahead of only 3 edge rushers in the entire mock draftable database going back to 1999. So ideally, he comes in at 245 and just completely dominates the 40 and the rest of the drills. If he comes in at 234 and has mediocre speed and athleticism, that's a serious problem. As good as he was at Texas Tech, those are a lot of big red flags. So, if he's 245 and comes in and still looks like that dude, we're talking, I don't know, first round might be a little out there, but second round, absolutely. Top 50 pick. But on the negative side, he could slide to day 3. Caleb Proctor out of Southeast Louisiana, pretty self-explanatory, but absolutely dominant in the FCS where he played. They're going to need to be able to see him at the Combine perform at a high level for obvious reasons. Now, he was at the Shrine Bowl, which is going to already work very much in his favor because he looked very, very good there. But this is just going to be further, let's call it further validation when he can do the athletic testing and prove that, I not only fit the bill as far as what I did in college statistically, I not only fit the bill because I went up to the Shrine Bowl and went up against better competition and handled my own, but I move like an NFL player as well. Ruben Bain is actually kind of an interesting one. It seems silly because he's a lock top 10 guy. I won't say lock top 5, but he's very much at the top of everybody's board. The biggest issue for him is that he's 6'3", 270, and there's a lot of thought about his arm length. If he is 6'3", 270, and has sub-32-inch arms, there are some people that are saying we may need to stack a couple pounds on him and slide him inside and let him be, interior pass rush type. And obviously that's going to hurt his draft stock. If even if half the teams view him as a defensive tackle, that's gonna hurt the probability. And even the ones that don't view him as a defensive tackle, you're still gonna have those short arm questions of, is he gonna be able to handle these big 6'7" offensive tackles with ridiculously long arms, especially being, kind of a big power guy. You're not going to really beat him with speed, and power is tough when you can't get your hands inside of these guys. So, teams are looking for 33-inch plus arms, and, again, checking all the other testing boxes, especially the speed portion of it. Speed, agility, explosion. I mean, all the big edge rush things. Then he's, a lock top 5 player. Another guy that's seen as an early round prospect is Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. He's currently at consensus 15 overall. The biggest flag for him, I mean, everybody seems to really like him. He is kind of an edge and defensive tackle hybrid guy. He's a big dude. The biggest thing is he had 2 sacks in 2025. And so some people believe that it's an explosion issue. It's his first step. And so, the testing is going to be important for him, especially the explosiveness, which is, I looked at this last year. I'll rerun the numbers, doing it a little bit differently. But I remember last year, one of the biggest things for edge rushers was the vertical explosion. And so, if he does well, that's not really going to answer the question of why did he only have that limited production. But he could at least check that box. He is only 20 years old, so a lot of people will just chalk it up as, he's developmental, will make it work. But, NFL Trade Rumors has a scouting report on him and just said prospects like him tend to have a low hit rate. And teams see this kind of stuff as well. So, there's going to be a lot of movement after the Combine, and Keldrick Falk could be a guy to keep an eye on. And again, the Combine is going to be a big one. If he comes in with kind of devastatingly low numbers in any real metric, especially explosion, agility, whatever, there may be some conversations to be had about Keldrick Falk and what do we do with him. And then LT Overton, and this is one that I'm kind of interested in as well. If you've been paying very close attention, I've been very low on Overton, and I think it's for fairly good reason. He played at Alabama. He was kind of just bleh. It was really nothing overly remarkable, and that's despite the fact that he came out of high school one of the highest defensive prospects to come out of high school in years. I mean, he was hyped to the frickin' moon. And so he has got raw potential like you wouldn't believe, but he never really put it together at Alabama. So, this is an opportunity to kind of reignite. I've talked about this before. Obviously college guys are obsessed with high school prospects, but this is the business that guys like Gutekunst and all these scouts and everything, this is what they do. They knew the name LT Overton when he was in high school. And they've been watching his career since day one. And every time these guys come to the college ranks, they always think, man, I'd love to get my hands on that guy. They get excited thinking about when they come to the NFL. And so, it wouldn't probably take very much for Overton to get in there and dominate. And just, some of these guys are just built different. The way that they look, their bodies, the way that they move. If he can just be that guy and show everybody, holy crap, yeah, this is a different kind of human being. We need to, we got to work on a couple things, but this is that dude. But he's got to find a way to wow people, because what you did in high school was a long time ago now. I'm sure interviews are also going to be big, like it is with a lot of these guys when the production doesn't seem to meet the potential. There's going to be a sense of, so what the heck happened? Then we get to the linebackers. Another very similar situation to Overton. You got Harold Perkins Jr. out of LSU. He is currently sitting at 120 overall. He was a 5-star recruit, number 8 in the 2022 class, freshman All-American. Then he tore his ACL in 2024 after just 4 games. Came back 2025, solid, but didn't seem as explosive. So again, kind of getting back to what we talked about with the early evaluation, unlike Overton, Perkins came in and was very good. This guy came in as a rookie, started 513 snaps, had a 77 grade, 70 run defense, 71 tackling, 91 pass rush, which he did a ton, 163 snaps. You could argue he's a pass rusher more than anything else. 41 pressures on 163 attempts. Hold on a second. That's got to be a record. 41 divided by 163, 25% pressure rate and 10 sacks. As a middle linebacker, he played just 77, well, maybe that might not be true 2022. Let me just check. It's not super important. I'm just kind of intrigued now. No, he played more snaps on the defensive line early. 210. Anywho, that in and of itself could be a question, is would anybody want to move him? Although he's down to 222, so he would have to bulk up. Whatever. Doesn't matter. 5-star recruit, unbelievably talented. Had a very good first 2 years, which again, that early evaluation is a big deal. And it shows a really high level of talent. 2024, though, tears his ACL, ends the season with a 60 grade, 63 run defense, 57 pass rush, 60 coverage. Comes back 2025, 62 grade. So he never really returned to that 2022 form. And even if you say, well, 2022 is just a 77 grade, it's not that impressive. The point is, that was his freshman year. So if you're that good then, the assumption is, without any injuries and whatnot, you probably would end up being very, very good. So it's a tough evaluation because he showed the signs early of being that dude, but now he's also showing signs of being a guy that got hurt and didn't come back the same player. And so if they believe through medicals and through testing at the combine or whatever that he can and will be that guy again, this is a freaking steal outside of the top 100. The other issue is that at his size, he's kind of too small to even be an inside linebacker. Even Brian Kelly, his coach, said that moving him there was a mistake. And so he doesn't have the coverage ability. He's never really been 2023, he was very good in coverage, which again was one of his 2 years pre-injury. But the 3 other years, not very good in coverage. That's been kind of an issue. And so what do? You move him to like a star position, kind of a safety hybrid position? Well, no, he's not a cover guy. And he's small to be an inside linebacker. He's obviously way too small to be an outside linebacker. So, what are we going to do? Well, we got to check the medicals. We got to see if he put on some weight. You know what I mean? Is he going to be above 225? Is he going to be at 215? So the weigh-in, the medicals, and then I think the other one is going to be the coverage ability. I mean, the biggest question, obviously, is he that same guy he was in his first 2 years in college? But then also, you do have to demonstrate that you can cover, which, again, outside of 2023 was not super evident. Next up, you got Arvell Reese. This guy is, again, this is like the Micah Parsons guy, at number 2 out of Ohio State. He's listed as a linebacker. I think most people view him as a pass rusher, whatever. It's a very weird thing. But even though this is mostly set in stone, he needs to go there and just show everybody, yes, you're all correct about me. He needs to prove that he is that number 2 overall guy. And it's very important. I mean, it's important for a lot of other guys in terms of whether you even get drafted. But the difference between being number 2 or sliding outside of the top 10 is like a $20 million difference. So there's $20 million on the line for him to just go in there and be like, yep, you all had it right about me. And the biggest thing he has to prove is I can be a pass rusher. Nobody's taking him as a linebacker. If he comes out of there and people are like, no, I think he's a linebacker, they're not going to do it. And I think the Micah Parsons thing might end up being kind of a trap because you got to remember Micah Parsons. I mean, look at his 40 time. He is a freak beyond what is humanly possible. He's a different kind of human being. Arvell Reese, the problem with the Micah Parsons thing, and I'm not trying to talk anybody out of him necessarily, but it's worth thinking about. Guys like Micah Parsons can be kind of a trap. Because you take these sort of tweeners that are these linebacker edge rusher hybrids, and you should be scared of tweeners generally. And you look at it and say, oh, he can do it all. Well, there's a massive difference between a guy that can literally do it all and guys that just can't do any of those things at a really high level. And more often than not, they end up being that, as opposed to a Micah Parsons, who is an elite pass rusher and will always be used in that capacity. But there's zero doubt if we put him at linebacker, he would be the best linebacker on our team. I don't doubt that for a second. And not just blitzing from inside, but do you remember watching him drop in coverage? I was stunned the speed at which he could drop into coverage, which shouldn't be surprising given his speed, but he's legitimately scary dropping into coverage. And so teams tend to get infatuated with the jack-of-all-trades players, and far too often we hear the stories about he can do anything. He could play edge. He can play linebacker. He could play safety. You could probably even put him at corner. We've heard all this bull crap from linebackers, especially before, and they end up not being able to do anything. So it seems stupid, like, oh, come on, he's a lock number 2. It's over. It's done. Everybody knows it. I get that, and you're probably right. But it is a high-risk situation, especially since, again, he is not going to test like Micah Parsons did. And so we're kind of just lying when we say, yeah, he's definitely Micah Parsons. If he is, that's awesome. But he has to be able to demonstrate he can run a sub 4.5 40, that he's got, sub 6.9 3-cone. His arms measure 34 plus. There are things that can happen that would cause people to hesitate. So it's going to be interesting. More than likely he shows up, he does what everybody expects him to do, and the narrative doesn't change. But if he doesn't, it will be very interesting to see how that changes. Jake Galday will be interesting. He's at 53 overall right now. I think for him, it's somewhat similar, just on a different level. Jake Galday, I think, gets a lot of hype. And maybe this is unfair to pretend that people don't like his tape, but there are very high expectations for him at the combine. He has been on the Feldman's freak list, and reportedly can run a 4.24 shuttle, which will probably be the fastest of any of the linebackers at the combine. 10.7 broad jump. That would have been the second best last year's combine. 22.16 miles per hour is insane for a linebacker. 36-inch vert, 24 bench reps, 365-pound max bench at 240. It just paints a picture of an athletic freak. The problem is there are some evaluators that have said that his instincts are kind of not quite up to where the athleticism is, which, by the way, is massive. I've said this 1,000 times, especially with linebackers, but it's true from every position. Speed starts between the ears. You take a guy that runs a 4.7, but he sees it before the ball is snapped, and he's already moving in that direction before the ball is even handed off, and you put him in a race to the running back with a guy that doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I don't care how fast you are if the guard's able to get up and wall you off because you haven't triggered downhill yet. You know what I mean? So, again, a lot of what people like about him are his tools. And so he needs to show that he is everything that has been reported via the Feldman freak list. And if he is, people are going to get very excited. Coaches are going to be like, bro, I can turn that guy into a freak. If he's not, then he's just a guy that doesn't seem to have the instincts, and also just has decent athleticism. Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma is another one because, it's another question of, is he even a linebacker to begin with? He's a tweener guy, and obviously is a guy that people feel less confident as far as his tweener abilities. NFL mock draft database has him listed at 202 as a safety. The combine, when they put out their invitee list, put him down as a linebacker, which is why I'm listing him as a linebacker here. That's what they're calling him. So he's probably, they have these things where they kind of split it up. The linebackers do this, the safeties do this. Some of the guys kind of cross-train, and they may ask him specifically, I'd like to see you run these drills. And so he may have to do kind of double duty and run some of the extra drills just to kind of see for some of these teams to sell himself in either of these positions. And then lastly is a name that came up recently by one of our callers, Red Murdoch out of Buffalo. And that one's pretty straightforward. The experience at Buffalo is not quite the same as Harold Perkins had at LSU. And so they're just going to want to make sure that, even though Buffalo isn't an FCS program, it's a long way from SEC Big Ten competition. And so they're just going to want to kind of, again, get your hands on him, get the interviews, get the measurables, and just kind of see if you believe that he can hang with the big boys. And then finally, if we look at the defensive backs, start off with Takario Davis, cornerback out of Washington. I think the biggest thing for him, and we've seen this from corners out of Washington specifically. Packer fans will know what I'm talking about. 6'4", 200-ish pound guy. He's built like a big wide receiver. Now, generally speaking, 6'4" is not a terrible thing when you're a corner. All things being equal, you'd love bigger and stronger and faster and everything. But there have been issues with guys that are big that can maybe handle more of the straight line stuff and struggle with a little bit more of the agility type stuff. There have been talks about, hey, for a 6'4" guy, he moves well. NFL Draft Buzz in their breakdown said he has impressive change of direction for his frame, which that caveat is in and of itself problematic. I don't care about for his frame. You don't get matched up in the NFL based on frames. You know what I mean? So we don't do caveats. But apparently multiple scouts have kind of looked at his length and said it makes it harder for him to cover smaller, shiftier receivers in man coverage, a little flat-footed, slow getting out of his back pedal, all that kind of stuff. So, again, his height, weight, and everything is not a deterrent in and of itself. The question is, can you move like an NFL corner? So, first of all, the 40-yard dash, that's fine and all that. If you're fast, that's great. But we got to look at three cones. We got to look at, in the field drills, the back pedal and all that kind of stuff and see, can you move like an NFL corner moves? And if you can, then heck yeah, then the 6'4" thing is an asset. If not, it becomes a liability. Best case scenario, this guy who's at 146, we could be talking about a second-round prospect. If not, then he's going to settle himself into the day 3 conversation. Damani Jackson, Alabama cornerback, he's at 188, pretty similar area. In fact, one spot behind Caden Wetjen. Very similar to what we said about Harold Perkins Jr., the linebacker out of LSU. Number 1 overall recruit in the 2022 class. Highest rated cornerback prospect in years, chose USC, transferred to Alabama, never met that level. So he needs to go out there again and show, I'm that dude. Go out there and run in the 4.3s and flip your hips like nobody else. Show that I was a 5-star recruit, number 1 recruit in the entire class because I'm an absolute freak. And then again is the interviews. We need to know if motivation or something is potentially a problem with Damani Jackson because you're too talented to have put up the production that you did. Caden Wetjen is a receiver that has like 20 receiving yards in college, and you're the number 1 recruit out of high school, and you're basically the same spot as him. That doesn't make any sense. He did have a bit of a breakout at Alabama, but again, it was that year 4 breakout. 2 years at USC. The first year you didn't even start. The second year you weren't very good. You go to Alabama, it was kind of and then you ended with a 74 coverage grade, which is nice, but even that, he wasn't even a full-time starter that season. 108.2 passer rating when targeted. Has just 2 interceptions in his entire college career. All of them came in 2024, meaning 3 of his 4 years he had 0 interceptions. So a lot of questions there. But again, this is the showcase. This is the I'm still that dude thing. You've got your small school guy in Charles Demings. Went to Stephen F. Austin. Not a very well-known school at all. He's looking to become the first SFA defensive back drafted since Terrence Shaw in 1995. Apparently ran a 4.40 in high school. So, potentially a super fast corner. Presumably he's faster than that now. But we'll see is if, like a lot of the small school guys, it's just you got to show up and prove that you're just like these other guys. You look like them, you move like them, you act like them, and you can handle what's being thrown at you. Similarly, but at a much higher level, is Emmanuel McNeil Warren. This is a very high prospect. Where is he at right now? He's at 34. So, it's actually a very big deal for Toledo, for the program, for everybody, if he can slot into the first round. Daniel Jeremiah apparently put him number 19 overall. So that would be a pretty big deal for the program if he can get there. I think the question, first of all, is, smaller school, and so we want to see all this stuff. The other thing is, could he end up like Nick Imanwari last year, which ended up working out very, very well? But is he more of a slot guy? Is he a safety slot hybrid type of a player? And so there's positional questions around him as well. And so it's the small school stuff as well as scheme fit. And then, funny enough, I don't know what it is with Washington, but the other Washington corner, Ephesians Prysock out of Washington, also around 6'4", 200 pounds. So it'll be interesting to actually get him measured. There's going to be some questions about his height, his weight, and his frame, particularly arm length and wingspan, which could end up working very much to his credit. He is further down on the board than Takario Davis, so there's more questions about him. I think more generally, whereas Takario is just, is the 6'4" a hindrance or are you good? With Prysock, it's a little bit more than just that. I think there's more questions about the tape itself and whether or not you're just a good corner, but they want to get all the measurements. They want to make sure, he is what he appears to be, because again, very similarly, the height and length and everything else is a massive benefit, but only if it isn't more so a hindrance. So either way, there are lots and lots of guys that have been invited to the combine. I had been contemplating doing like a live stream, but it's such a grueling thing and it's so slow. I think it would be better served to kind of just observe. Maybe, kind of live tweet anything out that's interesting or worth noting. More importantly, though, I'll be updating my board. So again, check the comment section of this podcast. You'll be able to see a link to my big board. I appreciate the subscribers that I have so far. You guys are absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to keep working on that. I'm going to keep making sure that the information is loaded and updated. Again, there's a spot where you can see latest updates. So, some of the stuff that was done earlier, I'll be sure to revisit that and update that as we go along, especially post-combine. But any news and notes that come out, any big takeaways from the combine will be added, any rumors, whatever. So, again, the goal is to make that the absolute best scouting guide that you can find, and I intend to do that. And the other thing, I don't know if I've mentioned this, I've decided I absolutely do not have time to watch tape. I'll watch a little bit when I can. I just don't have the time to add in the tape watching as well as doing my own grades. And so what I'm going to do is, and this is going to take some time as well, I'm going to do a purely mathematical grade. I'm actually very excited about it. I just have to get it going. Like I said, I've downloaded all the PFF stuff, so I have that ready to go. I just have to get the 2025 stuff downloaded. And then I'm going to start running some mathematical Python type things to try to find correlations and whatnot to their, potential success rate, the likelihood of success in the NFL based on, the statistics and the grades and all this, as many things as I can possibly find, as well as the combine data, which is also going to be big. So the actual grades, I got a couple test grades on there, which honestly are just annoying me right now because it keeps sorting by that and I hate it. I might change that or just delete it or something. I don't know. It's weird, but I like having it on there so that you can see what it looks like, whatever, just kind of as an example. But I'm going to get to work on that, and I'll have grades, and it'll be great because I'll have grades for the entire draft class, and I'll be able to get those up relatively quickly. Again, relatively, there's a lot of guys to get through, but that'll just ensure that I have a scouting guide for the entire draft class. I'm going to be ripping through as many of these guys as I possibly can with grades and notes and everything else. So appreciate y'all, and I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.